give people some time to join while I set up recording, because this one is going to be recorded and then the edited version is going to become a chapter, course, chapter, lesson, something in my React for Data Visualization course that's launching sometime this month. How do I record this here? If I do Command-Shift-2, hey fuzzy buddy, you're always, no, not built-in microphone, you're always very on point with showing up. I like that. I need to run cam twist as well. Always forget that one. So having cam twist and Camtasia running lets me, let's see, it lets me record my face as a separate stream, which then lets me move it around. Let's see, so I'm not actually sure if anyone's gonna join because this is pretty late in the day and people have better shit to do, you know. So camera live, there we go. I can now start recording, or let's see, maybe we can let's give people a little longer to show up. Why is this keep getting selected? Okay, click through mode. I'm gonna open the project and start it up, and then we're gonna start refactoring. So it's in random coding, in walkthrough, no, it's in H1B software salaries, and I'm gonna close all of the files that are currently open. Go here, cd documents, random coding, H1B software salaries, git status, git log. When was the last time so it was in October that I last changed it. That makes sense, sounds about right. Which branches do we have? Perth audience, that is in Perth audience, that's Australia, right? Is that from Australia? As I know, somebody complained that they're in Amsterdam and this is happening at like 6 AM for them. So I'm gonna commit this code, whatever it is, -a-m, and please tell me if you can hear me well and if you can see what I'm typing and stuff like that. If any of that doesn't seem right, please ping me in the chat room. I believe I can see the chat rooms from anywhere you might be watching this. So if this is on Periscope, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and on YouTube. So if you're on any of those, I should be able, I should be able to see what you're typing. I can't necessarily type back, but I can always speak back. So if you ask me stuff, I will be able to answer. Something about data sets. Cool, and I'm going to git check. Okay, so let's start recording now. I think a couple people joined, a couple people already dropped off. I think that's going to be happening. Don't worry about staying for the entire stream. It's okay to come in and out as you please, especially now in beginning when I'm being kind of slow to get started. Cool, 7 people watching. That is more than I usually have in the evenings. I like that. So we're gonna, are you streaming from one place to stream on all these places? Yes, I'm hey JWILBC, that is very difficult to pronounce. So I'm using Restream, which lets me multi-stream to all the different streaming services while my OBS just streams to that. So I'm starting the recording. It's recording my entire screen, all 5K. I believe this is going to eventually break my computer, but we can see how far we get. So I'm gonna get started. The goal today is to take our data visualization, that is the core example for React for data visualization, and we're going to refactor only the data viz parts to hooks. I don't want to refactor the entire state management because that would be a lot of work, and I think there's going to be a lot of people covering all that state management stuff in hooks, so I want to focus on the D3 stuff in hooks. Do I have any idea how long I'll be live coding for? We'll see how long it takes. I usually try to go for an hour, but it might take us more than an hour, probably not gonna take us less than an hour, so expect around there. And I'm going to, like I said, if you have the course or if you intend to buy the course, it's going to be there. But the code, the video, this particular video, the unedited version, is going to stay on YouTube at least for a while. So I switched to a new branch called Hooks Refactor. I'm gonna run yarn start to make sure that the current version of everything we have is working and is in order, and also so I can show you what we're actually dealing with, and then we're gonna start slowly refactoring things one by one. There's gonna be, I think, 3, maybe 4 data visualization components that we're gonna deal with. And we might reuse some of the stuff that I built a while ago for D3 black boxes. So it's starting the development server. This is where my computer is going to start struggling and being a problem. So I'm hoping it's not too big of a problem. And in the meantime, while that's happening, we can go into package.json, and we're going to upgrade React from 16.4 to the new latest version, which I believe is 16.8, and that will give us everything we need. Cool, so the server started. Oh, one more thing I'm gonna do is switch it to the smaller data set, because that will make our life a lot easier. So that's just a screenshot right now. Video frame rate is low. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot I can do about that, because it's saying that it's recording at 56 frames per second and uploading at about 3 megs. That's how much my internet can take, and it's going to look, the frame rate might look weird because I'm also recording this, so my computer is pretty taxed right now. So this is the data visualization we're dealing with. Let me fix the layouting, so that used to work better. This is supposed to be on the right, and basically now if you click on one of the buttons, it filters the data set so you can see a more focused view of a particular thing. We're not going to deal with that. We're going to be refactoring this part, the axis, and the median household line. But the idea of this visualization is that you can see that individual people in tech make more money than entire households in their counties. So let's see, React 16.8. Wow, it's already 16.81. So we're gonna change this to 16.8.1 and React DOM 16.8.2. Let's see, 16.8.1. I'm gonna have to stop the yarn server, unfortunately. We're gonna run yarn again, that installs the updated version of our thing. Well, this is not 91K in SF. This is 91K in the entire United States. In SF, I think the median salary for engineers is higher than that. I need to turned off my heater. It was getting kind of hot in here. Right now we're waiting for yarn to finish updating React, and then we can really fully get started. I'm gonna open, while that's happening, I can open, let's see, which files do we need? Oh, I said in app.js, we're gonna change it to load the small data set, which will help us keep my computer faster. Or is it in data handling? Let's see. It's been a while since I touched this project, so you might see me struggle sometimes. Yes, it's in data handling. So data handling JS, React.js, we go down here, and I have a data set that is like a shortened concatenated version of the data set, which will make the visualization wrong, but it will also make it faster because it's instead of like 150,000 data points, it's only about 5,000 or something. So ls public data. We have H1B 2016 shortened, so I'm gonna use that, -16 shortened. Cool, got that. Now we can say git status, git commit -a-m, update React to version with hooks. Cool, that's the first step we got done. Yarn is still running, that might take a little while. In the meantime, while Yarn is running, and please tell me if the code is big enough or I should zoom in further. I'm already a little bit struggling with how much stuff I have in, how much stuff I can fit on the screen, but I think it's better that you can actually see it. So I think the easiest will be if we start with the median line, because that one is already pretty, how should we say, you know, it's already very close to what it would look like with hooks. How do I... So my VS Code is acting funny and not giving me a chance to switch this to React mode. There we go. It was a bit too small. So React mode. Got the median line. Did Yarn finish updating? Yarn did finish updating. Cool. I'm gonna run Yarn start again, and we're gonna see the data visualization with the smaller data set. That's showing up here in a couple of seconds. Again, this is a poor top of the line 2017 MacBook Pro, so its CPU was not made to run all of this stuff all at once. Screenshot, and yes, gotta remove the filtering because our filtering was wrong, and now we have all of this stuff. So we can start with the median line because that is the simplest visualization. So the first what this is doing, it's creating a linear scale. Hey Nekmitten, I'm doing pretty great today, how are you? So vertical scale called Y scale, we're using this to translate between data points and pixels on the screen. It's helping us, you know, kind of calculate things. We're gonna change this. We're basically, the goal of what we're doing today is moving all of this D3 stuff into hooks, which will make the code more efficient by being smarter about when it runs. We're gonna use the use effect hook from React, and the first thing is we're gonna say, should we use a combination of state and effect? Let's see. So we need to define the vertical scale based on our data, on the height of our visualization, on the vertical positioning, on the bottom margin, and that's about it. So we can say use effect. Okay, we are gonna have to set use state. So we're gonna use state as well. Use state, and we say const y scale, and set y scale comes from that comes from use state, starts with a null definition because we don't that might, okay, we'll see how that works. Then we have a use effect. Use effect is a method that does all of this stuff. So we take D3 scale linear, the main range blah, and we put all of that into set y scale like this, and we say that this particular effect depends on data, value, height, vertical position, and bottom margin, like that. Hey Carlos, so line is not defined. Why is line not defined? Because we moved it from a const, like that. So now we're gonna, the idea is that we're changing it piece by piece and hopefully seeing it work every time. Y scale is not a function. Right, so that is a problem then. And we're probably gonna end up extracting a lot of this stuff. Hey, Lyric Balloon. We're gonna potentially start extracting a lot of this stuff into custom hooks as things begin to take on familiar shapes. That's kind of weird. I guess what I'm trying to say is we're gonna start seeing patterns eventually, and we are all figuring this out at the same time. So use effect set y scale. Now our problem is that down here when we're using the scale, it's not defined yet. So how do we fix that? Guess we can use the same effect here, and we're gonna change this. So use y scale set y scale, then we can, guess we should potentially wrap this in an if. I'm not sure yet how I feel about this. We're gonna see how it works. Fail to compile, translate is not defined. Okay, so now that's not a good approach. What else can we do? We want the y scale to only update on these values, but we actually want everything to update only on those values. So let's see. What can we do with the fact that we're using translate here? I guess we really only need to use translate once the y scale is actually defined, which means what happens if we say this? If y scale is not defined yet, we're going to return null, and that will give us, this is like a stopgap to make it work while we figure out how to make it work better. Y scale is not a function. Why is y scale still not a function? So let's see, console log y scale, and we will see what happens. So it's running, then supposedly on mount it runs use effect, and y scale is a number? That's weird. Why is y scale a number? Okay, so we will try to figure this out. Median line 28, this is this one. So this is strange. I think did they change how use effect works? Let's see, React documentation. No, not React tweet. React.com, does that exist? React.js.org, docs, did they change how use effect works? Use effect. Use effect did update, accepts a function that contains imperative, possibly effectful code, mutations, subscriptions. Instead use effect. The function passed to use effect will run after the render is committed to the screen. Think of effects as an escape hatch from your React's purely functional world into the imperative world. By default, effects run after every completed render, but you can choose to fire it only when certain values have changed. I program as my main job, so that's conditionally firing. Use state, use effect. So why is use effect doing weird stuff for us here? We might actually find out that use effect doesn't, that this stuff doesn't even work. D3 versus 3JS for visualizing a massive number of vectors. It'll have to be able to be draggable too. That is a very tough question that is difficult to answer right now. So I am not, let's try figuring this out first, and I'm gonna try to answer that later. In general, WebGL has better performance than So in general, WebGL has better performance than SVG, which is what you would probably use with D3. But D3 as such doesn't actually care what you're rendering to, so you could actually be using both D3 and 3JS to render your massive data visualization. But that is a very broad question that we can talk about later. Let's figure this out first. So what is the scale actually doing? Let's see. Why are we getting a number instead of a function? That's what I'm trying to figure out now. So that, interesting. So use state, how does use state work? Did they change that one? State and set state, yes. Returns a stateful value and a function to update it. Correct. The set state function is used to update the state. So this is I'm very confused right now. We are definitely creating a function here. So our scale is definitely a function, but then when we feed it into set state, it starts returning a method. That makes no sense, does it? Well, this is a problem that we're gonna try to figure out. What if we do it like this? Let's say that we are setting an object. Will that work better? Cannot read property y scale of null. Right, so that's gonna start as an empty object. Let's see. Okay, interesting. I think we may have found a bug in what's it called? This is potentially a bug in what's it called, in hooks, because if we were setting state to just a function, it was returning a what's called a number, but now that we set it to objects, it's returning an object. It's returning the what we actually want, which is kind of weird when you think about it. So we now have that working, and we also at the same time have a way to put multiple things in here. So we're gonna do the line as well. So we take our line and we put it here. Now we need to be dependent also on the width, and we're gonna move the line here. So this is getting out of hand, I feel like. Right? Okay, so that works. Now what else can we do? We can still use, this still makes sense as, so we've kind of refactored this. So we're using useEffect to calculate D3 objects on the smallest possible amount of change. And let's actually say that we want only data.length to change, because data is an object. So ideally we would have some way of hashing data and calculating just that, but I happen to know that if data changes, its length is going to change, so we can use that. Then the value with height, y bottom, margin. So we're now recalculating our object on the smallest possible amount of change, then using local state to update what the outside uses. Okay, so I think this is going to be a pattern that we're going to try to make, how would you call this? We're gonna try to generalize this later, but let's move on to the next object or to the next data visualization part and see what happens when we update that one. So git status, git commit minus git commit minus a minus m, using hooks to update. Wow, what was that? Sorry, my computer just jumped to the wrong screen. Using hooks to update, what is this called? Update D3 state in median line. Cool. Got that. Now let's open up. What's the next one? I think a good next option to play with is the map. So let's see. Command save map, county map. Actually, let's do the axis next, because I have a thing already that will work for the axis. So axis.js. This is a Hawk version, and I'm going to update this so that it's no longer using the Hawk, and it's also not going to use the local implementation of the higher order component, but a use D3 function that I have implemented in December. So let's see. You can find it on d3blackbox.com, and I think it should still work, but we're gonna see. So use D3, where is it? It should work like this. Let's see then. So hooks refactor yarn at D3 black box, and we're gonna see if we can actually make it work. Getting all the code. Using kind of depend lyric balloon. Actually, if you follow the stuff I've been posting about, I found a way to have D3 and Canvas and React work together so that you have all of the capabilities as if it was SVG, and it's still pretty performant. The main thing that people have trouble with when it comes to Canvas is dealing with click events and detecting different objects, but there are libraries that help you that do that for you. Okay, so we now have a D3 black box. I'm going to import use D3 from D3 black box, and what we're gonna find out next is whether this still works, because it's been a while since I developed that library. So we're gonna say const access equals a method that takes what? It takes x and y, and it takes a scale, and it takes data, and it returns a it is in my book, but don't buy it right now. I recommend waiting a week or two when I'm going to relaunch the book and course with a lot of updates that I've been working on in the last 6 months. And it's really bad of me to say don't buy something right now, but honestly, this is a really bad time to buy something from me. You really want to wait 2 or 3 weeks. So we have, or you can reach out to me personally on any of the things, and I will do stuff for you. So we have an axis. Now let's see, how did I say use D3 should be used? So we have use D3, which takes a D3 render method. That's this stuff here. So we're gonna take this, and we're gonna okay, so it takes an anchor, and it should do this stuff, blah, and it should D3 select our anchor and then call the axis upon it like that, and we are going to say it's using the scale and it's using data, and that's it, and it returns a grouping element with a ref called ref anchor. And the D3 thingy actually returns ref anchor. So ref anchor use D3, that then gets the anchor, and our function renders an axis inside the anchor element. And we transform this to translate $x and $y like that. And let's see if that works. So hooks API reference, will the axis still compile? We do need import React from React. Now will it compile? Let's see. Yay, that still works. Awesome. So we've now used my new open source hook that I've built a couple months ago to do D3 black box rendering with very little fuss actually. That worked pretty well, I think. Might need to it would be great if it knew how to be more optimized so that it doesn't re-render every time, but that's fine because it's only meant to be used for small libraries. So git commit -a-m, refactor axis component to use hooks instead of hook. Cool. Git push origin hooks refactor. Now the next one is going to be actually the geographical thingy, and we're gonna see how we can refactor that one to use to be a bit more, you know, hooky instead of whatever. So we're gonna start with county map. County map, that's this one, and this is now a more complicated thing. It has a constructor that creates our GeoAlbers USA projection, and it creates a geopath thingy to do stuff. Wow, that was very eloquent of me. So we have a quantized scale which gives us the colors. We have a geopath that takes JSON data, topo JSON data, and converts it into a geographical shape for an SVG path. We have the GeoAlbers projection, and then this is something that would make Dan Abramov turn in his grave, I think. So basically, he would look at this, die from saying you should never. He doesn't like it when you use get derived state from props, but I think it's really useful. And then he would turn in his grave from us using this. So what we're gonna do next is turn all of this into a use effect hook that does basically everything. It is going to make this a pretty sizable function, but I think we can make it work. So let's see, how can we do this? We can, let's see, we can say const county map is a function. Let's say function county. I feel better with this approach. Const county map equals a function that takes a bunch of props and returns a thing. And now we're gonna do this. We're gonna return the render method, and our render method is going to be this. So we're gonna take the render method, we take all of this stuff, and I'm going to extract it. So basically I'm going to keep this as a render method so that we can have basically so that we don't have one supermassive function, and it makes it easier to read our code. So we have const like that, or let's say function render, which is going to take what? So it's going to take US topo JSON and values and zoom. That's like our props, but it's also going to take geopath and quantize, which used to be our state. We do this, and we can in fact also take out the if thing like that to make it even cleaner. So we say if there's no topo.json, we return null, otherwise we return render, because this is now this little function is now our county map component, which means it can do everything. Cool. So now we have that. Now let's see, we can say this is going to be like our state, which is going to have similar to here, where is it, county. So the same as in, where did it go, median line. The same as in median line, we created a state that had multiple objects in it and one setter. So we're gonna do the same here. We're gonna have all of our D3 objects in one state and one setter for all of them that's going to run in useEffect. So that is our thingy, and we're gonna have set D3 objects, and that's going to be use state. It's gonna start as an empty object, right? Now we're gonna have a useEffect. So this is the rough equivalent of constructor, rough equivalent of set derived state from props, right? That's basically how we're doing this. That's how we're approaching it. So we have useEffect. useEffect takes a method and an array that tells us when to actually run this, so that we don't have to, you'll see, that makes our components more optimized. So we're gonna say, we're gonna take this const projection geo albers USA, we're gonna move that up here. We don't need these guys, I think. Now we can take all of this and we're gonna move that into our useEffect function here, and then we're gonna start slowly changing it. So instead of projection coming from state, we're gonna define it from scratch. We're gonna say const state projection, and before our projection was, oh, it's just dot projection. So this updates the projection itself. So projection, yes, that is the best thing about useEffect, is that we can specify exactly which changes in which props or which values trigger the recalculation of this thing. So we have projection gets updated on width and height changes, which means we can add projection width and height here. So width and height, we already know that needs to recalculate at least the projection, right? Now that is our projection. Then we have what's the next thing? So if so width and height is also up here. Those are props that are coming in. So that's our width and height going in here. Then we have zoom and US topo.json like that. So if zoom is defined, and US topo.json are defined, but we can just put those, yes, we want on zoom changes. We know that we want to recalculate this on zoom changes. From the way our visualization works, I don't think US topo.json is going to change, but it's better to be safe than sorry. This again should be hashed somehow. So we say the US is US topo.json, US state paths are topo.json feature. So topo.json is a library that we're importing that takes the feature from US object states dot features. Then we have US state names, which are also a prop, and they also need to trigger an update. So US state names, we find the correct ID for the zoom value, right? Then we update our projection with the new thing. Basically, we're updating the scale for our projection. Then we have the geopath, and I'm going to take the geopath basic definition from here. So rough equivalent of set derived state from props. That takes our projection. Why is this squiggly lined? Not sure why that is squiggly lined. Oh, that is why. So geopath equals d3.geopath.projection. Then projection translates, projection changes scale, we calculate the centroid of the thing, and then we update the centering of our projection in case zooming is defined. Now, if zooming is not defined, so if we have values, so values come from props and they also need to do stuff. So we take values from props, and if values are defined, then we update the quantize domain. So we have quantize, which comes from here. So quantize is defined as a scale that this one is for colors. If values blah, we take those things. Now once we have that, we say set d3 objects with our projection, our geopath, and our quantized scale, right? And when I delete all of this, it should just work. Let's see if it does work. Use state is not defined and use effect is not defined because we have to import them. So use state, use effect. I got something wrong. Cannot read us.json of undefined. Function render. Right. So in the render function, we have to pass in all of the props that we know we're gonna need. So I'm gonna just copy them from here because I think that's all of them. And we'll see if there's anything that remains undefined, right? We also are going to have to pass in the geopath, and what else does it need? So it uses okay, actually let's just copy these guys. Does it use width and height? No, it does not. So we can pass these in here, and now it should render. Geopath is not defined, quantize is not defined. Where? On line 92. This is line 92, which means we have to actually also take them from here. So geopath and quantize. Does it take projection as well? It does not actually. So geopath is not a function. On line 33, return geopath, and here, okay, so that's one of the problems with hooks, is that on the first try things aren't defined, so we have to double render stuff, which could actually be problematic in large data sets, or general with large things. This is forcing us to render stuff twice. So if or there's no geopath or there's no quantize yet, and now it's gonna work. Bam. So we now have will zooming work? Aha. Camera's dead. The camera should not be dead. Let's see. Camera error. Okay, let me restart that. Camera live. Thanks for the heads up. So I'm moving again. Awesome. Okay, so we now have a small problem here. Let's see. Yeah, the zooming doesn't work correctly. And let's try to figure out why the zooming doesn't work. So if we go to asterisk again, you'll see. asterisk asterisk, we reload the page, we get, you see how that was a little bit slower than it used to be? I think that is because we're using a somewhat large data set, and things are you know, it's a somewhat large data set. Rendering the entire United States in an SVG is hard. So the problem we're having here is that we're rendering twice. So the first time it renders, it's empty. Then it detects, then the use effect runs, updates all the stuff, and it renders again, which is great. Now, when we click the zoom function, you will see that it's not actually going to zoom directly into the United States, into California. And we can actually prove that here. So I'm gonna console log the zoom. Let's see, zoom is, we're gonna console log an object that says zoom and what it's currently set to. See, it's null, it ran twice, so we render twice. Then I click California, we render again, and this didn't move. It looks like it tried to move, rendered again. So let's see what's happening here. If we go into the SVG, so SVG county map, we can see the US, we can see the US state names, we can see the height, US top JSON, values, width, current zoom is set to California, and we have an effect, and our state is a object that we can't inspect in this thing. So what is the problem here? Let's see if the zoom runs in here. So console log effect of zoom, and we'll see if it actually works, because I have a feeling our effect is not rerunning when it's supposed to, or potentially when it does run, it's not doing something correctly. Okay, so in the effect did things, so that worked, and then our render ran again, which means we're potentially messing up in here. So effects, use effect does seem to be working. The code does seem to be re-rendering when it's supposed to, but our projection is not updating. So what can we figure out with that? Let's see if it is in fact re-rendering our if our projection is recalculating the centroid or not. So console log centroid and translate. So we're gonna see if that part is working, and then we can try to debug that, because it looks like it's kind of working but not quite, which is weird. So we'll see what's happening. Centroid blah, that runs. It is supposed to be translating it and doing stuff. Now what about because the thing is that you can see this part is changing. So where it's trying to, it almost looks like it's only partially applying the projection change. So the mesh, like the lines between states are re-rendering and zooming into California, but the actual United States itself, like the flat part, that part isn't, which is weird. So I'm wondering what's going on. Let's see, what are we doing here? So those are our counties. US state mesh, where is that coming from? US state mesh is from top of JSON. Then we get the county value map. This is a strange problem to have. and I'm not quite sure what's going wrong here. D3 geopath projection is updating here. Let's see, what did I do in the old code? I think I deleted something that I wasn't supposed to delete. So we're gonna go check it out here. On the original code, H1B software salaries, like that, and we go to the branch, what's it called? Branch, create React app, modern code. Oh, let me zoom in. So modern code, source, components, county map JS. Let's see, geopath gets the projection, and here we update the projection. And then we update state with projection and quantize. But maybe we have to, let's see, what if we define the geopath last? Okay, so we have the geopath here, geopath projection, then we update blah. Let's do this, geopath.projection. Let's feed in the projection again, and then here I'm going to feed it in again just in case. Do we have to update projection object in geopath again? And we will see if that makes it work, because this is quite a strange behavior that we're seeing right now. I haven't seen that before. No, it's so weird. See, I mean, the lines are moving, but the flat part isn't moving, which is weird. And I can't tell what we're doing wrong, unfortunately, which bothers me. So we don't have to do all of that again. And just to show you what I mean, let's try something. We're going to not render this path. So we're going to move that, and we're going to go into our counties. So that's this one. And the county, as you can see, is just rendering stuff. It doesn't know anything about anything. Should component update, that's fine, we can still keep using that for now. Geopath, that's the fill color. Oh wait, maybe that's what's wrong. Let's try removing that. So we go into county map, put that back, and let's try removing should component update, and let's see what happens then. Nope. Aha, there we go. Interesting. So something about should component update was breaking our stuff. I guess that's not necessary anymore, which is cool. Which means we can refactor this to be a, you know, a normal component. So we have county equals, and we take all of this stuff, that those are our props, and we return a object, or we return a functional React component. I'm not sure why should component update was breaking that, but we fixed it by removing it. So now we have a map that zooms correctly. Basically what we did was move everything from we created a new render method that renders stuff. Then we took everything from get derived state from props and moved it into what's it called? Into a new thing. Wow, I am being very eloquent today. Now let's see what else can we change. Can we only we only need to calculate the quantize scale once, don't we? Because it's a range. it changes on the domain. So the next thing we do, we can improve performance by granulating use effect so that it's not recalculating everything every time, but it's only doing it for the parts that are actually changing. So git commit -a -m, and we're gonna call this update county map to use hooks. Now let's see about granulating it out. So we know that use effect, let's see, we know that when the projection changes. The projection changes when, let's see, we can take the projection here and we can do this stuff, right? So this is still a const geopath blah, so we have that, and the projection changes when the width changes or the height changes or when the zoom changes, zoom and US topo JSON, or actually width and height, yeah, zoom and wait, no, so that, no, it doesn't really make sense. What we can do, however, is move the quantized scale. So graph equivalent of blah, let me move everything back just so we don't lose code, like that. Okay, so we now have a use effect that updates the projection, the geopath, the projection, the geopath, and the quantized scale. That's the main stuff. But we can move the quantized scale separately. Where are we even using the quantized scale? Okay, so let's see. Update geopath with new projection, and then we have update quantize when values change. So we have use effect, and that's going to depend on, we will see. We take the quantized scale out of here, like that, move it into our effect. It's a const, like that. Quantize, use effect takes the thingy, const quantize, and then if values are defined, like that, we're going to recalculate, where is it, the quantized scale. And this one seems to only depend on values, so we're going to put values here. And now, is there anything remaining in here that depends on values? So values, there isn't, which means we can take it out, and we can say set d3 objects. Let's see, set d3 objects, we don't need the projection, and we're gonna take the geopath and the quantized scale. Now here's the cool thing. This is still going to work even though geopath is not defined in here. What's it complaining about? Let's reload this. So the idea here is that we have geopath defined from here, which means we can put it back into state and it's going to remain unchanged, but we're locally changing the quantized scale and then putting it back into local state from use effect. Why is nothing showing up now, however? Very strange. Okay, so that's confusing. Does anyone have an idea why my map vanished? Quantize. Aha, we shouldn't be, no, we should be defining it there. Let's see. Let's console log our geopath and our quantize scale, and we will see if one of them is remaining undefined even after both effects run. Aha! Geopath gets defined and quantize remains undefined. Because why? Why does this never run? What are we feeding into our values? So if I go to app.js, county map, values are county values. County values are a thing that has filtered salaries map and returns values for each county. So why is that not running ever? Console log calculating quantize scale and console log inside county map component, and we're gonna see what happens. Okay, so inside county map component calculating quantize scale, which should work. Set d3 objects, if values, here let's see, console log, what are we checking? Console log setting d3 objects with all of this stuff, and I think potentially we are overwriting it, which would be a shame. So let's see what's happening. Maybe we can't actually have multiple use effects and use them in this way that I thought we could. Ah, yes. Interesting. So what's happening now is that we have a race condition between two effects, because we're setting the same thing. We're basically rewriting state, which is bad. So what can we do instead of rewriting state? Instead of rewriting state, we can say set quantize and feed in just the quantize scale, and we're gonna have set geopath, and we're gonna set just the geopath, and they need to be objects because, you know, weird things were happening before. So set quantize and set geopath, and we're gonna have them separate here. So set geopath and quantize, set quantize, and now it's going to work. That's the screenshot, and then it re-renders, bam, and zooms in. Okay, so that's what was happening. We were because we were using two different use effects, we can't use the same setter. Maybe use reducer is something that can help us there. So, oh, what's a use callback? That's new. Returns a memoized pass an inline callback and an array of inputs. Use callback will return a memoized version of the callback that only changes if one of the inputs has changed. This is useful when passing callbacks to optimize child components that rely on reference equality to prevent unnecessary renders. Okay. So use reducer. Will that be something that we can use? An alternative to use state accepts a reducer. So this is basically the old Redux stuff, which is not what we need here. Right. So that's not... I guess this is slightly more optimized, but it does mean we have more code to write. let's see if we can get it. Is there a way to make that? No. So there's no way to make that work with two different effects. We can make it work with a single effect, but I think this is kind of better. And let's see. Can we update any of this? No, so that's our projection. Okay, so that's the geopath and that's the quantized scale. The next step is, let's see, git commit -a-m, more granular use effect should have better performance. Git push origin hooks refactor. Now the next step is going to be updating the actual histogram component here, and then that's basically it. We haven't really found any great patterns to make custom hooks yet, which is unfortunate because I was hoping that we would. So let's see the histogram then. Histogram.js is a very similar beast as what's it called? A similar beast as county map. It does use a subcomponent, but we have local state that has a histogram, a width scale, and a y scale, and then we have get derived state from props, which we're going to move into a use effect, and we have this stuff. So let us begin. We can say const histogram is a function that takes props, which we don't know yet, and then we have rough equivalent of state. We're gonna say const of histogram with scale and y scale, and we're gonna say set d3 objects like we had before, and that's going to be use state that starts as an empty object. So that's our default. Those are our defaults. Then we are going to have our render method, which I think we can. It might be not a bad idea. We can actually. Yeah, we can take. Again, we can extract the render method into a separate function so that it's easier for us to read stuff. So tup returns render, which is going to take objects, and our function render is a method that has a const make bar inside that is like a helper. And then it returns all of that stuff. Bam. And it's going to take a histogram and a y scale and x, y data and axis margin. Takes all of that from its arguments. And we know that we need to feed those into our stuff here where we call the render method. Then we also can take, where was it? So we can take this stuff as props, because we know that comes from props into our original component, so it can stay there. So props for our component, and we don't need that anymore. And here we also don't need that. We are gonna have to pass in the width scale, so we're gonna pass that in here. So y scale with scale. Now set d3 objects. Again, we're gonna use effect, which takes a method that does stuff and depends on other stuff. Now what is this method doing? We can start with const histogram equals d3.histogram with scale equals d3.scale linear, and y scale is also d3 scale linear, like that. And then we're going to, for starters, just take all of this and use it to update here. So histogram updates thresholds, and then in the end it calls, so I can now delete this guy. Let's see, what does it call? It's gonna call, what was I gonna say? So set d3 objects with histogram, width scale, and y scale. Sets all of that, gets bins from props as well, and also the value accessor, like that. So it depends on the number of bins we want, it depends on data.length, because that's like an easy hash thingy. Then it also depends on what? Data length, and it's gonna depend on height, on the vertical positioning, and the bottom margin. So we take those here as well, height, y, and bottom margin, right? Yes, and we stop using them from props. And also if we change the axis margin, we also want that to be reflected in our render thing. So that should work in theory, right? We defined y twice. Let's see if it works. Use effect and use state, and on line 89 width is not defined. So we have to take width and height from here, and we have to import stuff, use effect, and use state. Is there any other way to use D3 with React aside from get derived state from props? Yes, there is. So histogram is not a function. Let's see. Let me figure this one out first, and then I'll answer your question, Einbisken. Histogram on line 52. So I forgot to feed it. No, I did feed it in. Oh, right. Here we have to say if histogram is not defined yet, or the width scale is not defined, or the y scale is not defined, then we don't render yet. Return null, else blah. Now it's going to work. So let's just make sure it works. Then I can answer Einbisken's question about get derived state from props. No. Cannot read property make bar of undefined, because it's not this anymore, it's just a function. And make bar is like a helper function so that the code is a little easier to read. Percent comes from props data length. So we can take just data.length now, because there's no more props and there's no more this. Nope. Props axis margin, where are you? So this is just axis margin. Now will you work? Please work. Yes. Okay. So it works. It seems to... I think it looks a little bit weird. Let's try reloading that again. This feels like something isn't updating correctly, I would say. Also, why is it still trying to go to CA? Oh, it's still reloading. That's weird. And now it zoomed in. So I have a feeling that we have a problem with rendering staleness somewhere. Okay, so now it's working. That's good. Perfect. So basically, Einbisken asked if there's any other way to use D3 with React without using get derived state from props. Yes and no. One thing is that I teach people to use getDerivedState from props because it makes your code slightly more efficient potentially, because you can do tricks like we did here to avoid recalculating your D3 objects on every render. The other approach is to put all of your D3 code in rendering in the render function directly, which works, but it has more overhead because you're recalculating everything every time, which becomes a problem with large data sets. The other approach is to use what I teach as the D3 black box approach, where you're using D3 to take control of a DOM node and render stuff directly in there. So, you know, that's one approach. So that's like 2-3 approaches depending on how you count on it. So git commit -a-m, refactor histogram to use hooks. So I think this has been, I'm gonna probably stop now because my girlfriend's gonna want to go to bed, and I can see that people have started dropping off because this became repetitive, which is actually a good sign. It means that we figured out a pretty decent approach to refactor to hooks from what we had before that doesn't take a lot of work, and means that what you already learned from my book on how to do this is useful still going forward. I wouldn't recommend refactoring all of your existing code to hooks, but do consider using hooks with new code. And I think that with a bit more thinking and like maybe a few more days of research, we can come up with something that is a bit better to use. I feel like there is a, especially these scales, there might be a way to generalize this into a hook that we can use to just say use D3 scale and tell it which scale and how to update domains and ranges. That would be cool, but it's getting late and I'm not going to be able to figure that out right now, so I'm going to stop streaming now. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and as always, well, not as always, an edited version of this is going to be part of React for Data Visualization, which is launching later this month. So hopefully you find that useful. If you get it, if you don't get it, that is totally fine. I know data visualization is not for everyone, but I think this has been an interesting experiment to see that what we were doing before isn't that big of a change from the big new world of React using hooks. So thanks everyone for watching, and have a good night or morning or whatever it is in your crazy time zone. Git push origin hooks refactor. Cool.